So, hello and welcome to Media Musings, where we're covering a very special topic today. Are monoliths atheists? Are monoliths atheists? Sorry, I couldn't resist. You know the that stupid debate coming up again while
Oh
we're
no,
talking.
the prefix is in there for you. They're monotheists.
Yeah. But that stupid debate coming up while we're talking 2001: A Space Odyssey, I had to do it.
Oh, the fact that debate has come up again not 2 weeks before Faithless Forum is going to be interesting because
Oh,
I'm physically seeing R and Ra in less than 2 weeks.
oh, that's gonna be fun for you.
I know. I feel like one of us should have changed our name to Dave before the thing started.
So, um, so, so the fun thing about 2001: A Space Odyssey, and of course we're starting Kubrick month with 2001: A Space Odyssey because it seemed like a good transition from Alien. And I'll probably say this at least once every week of this month, but in my opinion, Kubrick is one of the best, if not the best, directors of all time. Not for any particular technical reason, but because he based, if you look at his filmography, every just about every movie he's made has been an example of an entry into a different genre, and just about all of them are regarded as the best, among the best, if not the best, entries into that genre.
Yeah, he also, I think, has a habit of not feeling the need to stick to the trappings of any particular genre.
Yeah. But I bring this up now because basically the whole reason we have 2001: A Space Odyssey is Kubrick was a bit of a genre snob. As the story goes, he's like, I see a lot of potential in sci-fi, but science fiction science fiction movies are trash. So I'm gonna get in contact with Arthur C. Clarke and collaborate with him to see if we can make an actually good sci-fi story.
That tracks, honestly.
Yeah.
I did not know that story, but I believe that.
Yeah, the screenplay and the novel were written in tandem with each other.
That's quite fun. Wasn't it based off a prior novel as well?
So the bit with the monolith on the moon was lifted from an earlier Arthur C. Clarke story, because he's like, there's something in this, there's a bigger idea in this story that I want to play with.
Okay.
But yeah, largely 2001: A Space Odyssey, the movie and the book are based off each other. Neither is an adaptation of the other. Because they were both written in tandem. Also, we have a noodle in the chat.
Hello, the noodle.
Yes. And so, though, one of the bad things you can say about 2001, the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, is it doesn't really hold your hand when it comes to like the ideas of the plot. Like, instead of holding your hand, it actively gives you the finger.
That tracks. I have not actually seen the full thing, but seen bits of it as my family have watched it, and I've been wandering in and out the room several times.
Yeah.
But like, I've also like read plot synopses previously because thank you English lit. But
Yeah.
it does feel very much like it's just like, here, have all this, watch it 20 times before you work out what the point is.
Yeah. I will say it is a whole lot easier to follow if you're already aware of the novel and have read it. Because Arthur C. Clarke, on the other hand, is like, okay, I won't exactly hold your hand, but I'll at least tell you what's going on.
Yeah, that tracks. Which raises the question, is the book better than the film?
Well, I'll say in that, I'll say as a newcomer, if you're going to see one, or if you're going to, consume one before the other, the book is better done first. Because it, like, you kind of like, because 2001, there's like not a lot of dialogue in it at all, and you're like a good half hour in before any lines are spoken, if that.
That tracks. I do recall it being basically just classical music.
Yeah. Well, because and because the novel and the movie were written in tandem, and you kind of need to be familiar with the novel to have an idea of how the plot's going with it, to have an idea of what's going on in the plot without having seen the movie like 3 or 4 times before. I will be mentioning the novel in tandem, even though this is, Kubrick month. You know what? I screwed up. This, Kubrick month should have been in October. That way I could have used 2001 as a transition from Lit month into Kubrick month.
That would have been fun.
Yeah. But anyways, so the first good chunk of the movie takes place, let's see. Normal mainstream sci-fi is a detailed map. Clarke wrote a vague gesture in the right direction. Kubrick stuck up his middle finger, and you thanked him for his help.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah. Now, so it begins on Pleistocene Earth, essentially. Following, and both the book and the movie like start in the same place. Like I said, they were written in tandem with each other. The plot's basically identical, but the thing is, Kubrick's doing a lot of like, he's having the camera work do like the bulk of the storytelling. Meanwhile, with a novel, you're reading, so you get the plot without having to suss out what's going on just from the camera work alone. So it begins in Pleistocene Africa, which I have to make I have to comment on an interesting choice Kubrick made. Because, you know, there are like shots of, you know, just grazing animals. If I remember right in the book, they're just, you know, wild pigs. But Kubrick uses tapirs.
That's a fun take.
Yeah, so well, I kind of get I kind of get why Kubrick's using tapirs, because they do look kind of, you know, primeval.
This is fair. I can see that aesthetically being a fun choice.
Like, I can see it aesthetically, but like knowing the biogeography, I'm like, why the fuck are Brazilian tapirs in the East African Rift Valley like 4 million years ago?
Yeah, it is. See, it's always weird when you see tapirs in random bit of media, like no one knows anything about them, they've just seen them somewhere before.
Yeah.
I think that it makes sense thematically if you're going to assume that your audience are not like biology nerds.
Yeah, like I said, it does a great job setting the scene unless you know what you're looking at, which is kind of the opposite problem of the rest of the movie.
See, just from scenes that I've seen, though, I feel like that is, with some of the set pieces chosen, that's more of a common thing. Like, when I saw them doing anti-gravity, I was like, oh, I see how they've done that and this and that for the effects.
Yeah.
And, like, maybe that's just me knowing way more than I should about filmmaking techniques.
Well, I mean, and we'll get to this when we get to the modern day, even though it takes place in 2001. Or, you know, the near future as imagined by 1968.
Yeah, I was going to comment when we got there. They're optimists.
Yeah. That where we have so we're essentially following a tribe of basically Australopithecines, or rather non-generic, or rather generic, you know, missing link between, you know, common ancestor with chimpanzees and us. And like a good 10 minutes of the movie is devoted to just watching how life sucks for them. It's like they're barely scrounging a living. They get chased from the watering hole by another, you know, troop of Australopithecines. And, you know, one of them gets mauled by a leopard on screen.
Well, that's a bit I've managed to miss.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is like a blink and you miss it kind of thing, but like you'll like, it's early. I think it's before the watering hole, but it's early where you see you see them like kind of scrabbling through the dirt, picking like tubers, or, you know, just barely eking out a living. And out of nowhere, this leopard just like jumps off a rock and just mauls one of them on screen.
Ooh, that's honestly, that's sort of fitting, but still, ouch.
Yeah. And how, you know, you're watching them just scrabble by, like cowering underneath the rock. We get another shot of the leopard just like looking at the camera. And then the monolith is just there. And I mean, and that's kind of how it is in the book too, is like you get a lot more detail into their, into their viewpoint. I in fact I think they even get names and like simple, like descriptive names in the book.
Okay.
And then the monolith shows up, and this troop of Australopithecines like starts like touching the monolith and like licking it and like just it's the famous scene with the monkeys around the monolith.
Yeah,
it's like
doing all of the things that, let's face it, we'd do as humans if we found a random monolith.
Yeah. And it, the camera pans up and we see the moon, like the monolith, the moon, and the sun. Like it, like almost like in alignment. And then we get a couple more scenes. Like we get a scene of, the the monkey just with a tapir skeleton and bashing one of the bones against the skeleton. And the camera work does some really interesting storytelling here, because it shows you that he's figuring out hunting without having the guy in the monkey costume actually try and act out figuring out hunting.
Yeah.
Because it's, flashes, it's flashes of the guy, of the guy in the monkey costume bashing against bashing out like a femur bone against the skeleton, interspersed with quick clips of a tapir just falling down dead.
Yeah, I get the impression there's also the implication that, like, the fact that they found the monolith caused them to develop this.
Yeah, and like I said before, and I'll probably say a lot more in this episode. There's a lot more detail going into it in the book, because like the book makes it clear that the monolith is essentially like making neurons connect. Like while they're trying to figure out the monolith is, figuring out them and basically, engineering their brains to work at a higher level.
Just like, man, you'll work this out eventually. Here, let me speed the process up for you.
Yeah. And I can't remember, but I think it's implied that like it was trying it with other, like it wasn't exactly trying it with other wildlife. It's just the apes were the only ones curious enough to touch the monolith and begin the process.
That tracks. Like, I'm looking for something to do this to. You fuckers happened upon me.
Yeah. And then the troop, and then after the figuring out hunting back and forth montage of bashing in the skeleton and the tapir, and and a random tapir just falling over dead. It we see that this troop has plenty of meat now, and they see the other troop that drove them away from the water hole. And and this time they like pick out the leader and like beat him to death with the bone clubs. And then we have the the not quite as famous shot where the leader of the bone troop tosses the bone in the air, and then it's a cut to a rocket.
Yes, I really like that shift there.
Yeah. And like I said, Kubrick's not holding your hand. He's giving you a middle finger, and you're thanking him for doing it. It's like,
yeah, I feel like something for me watching it is that because obviously Kubrick's work gets imitated in places,
yeah,
I've seen that style of transition before, so I know what it indicates.
Yeah.
So, like, other people are effectively holding my hand for him.
Yeah. Yeah, like, it's basically, like, Kubrick was realizing that, or, like, Kubrick was, on the, like, cutting edge of what would become cinematic language. But here's like, fuck you, I'm gonna do my own thing. It's like, my definition of good sci-fi is sci-fi that is so cerebral you're gonna get a headache trying to understand it on the first go around.
That sort of sci-fi is very fun.
Yeah. While let's see. We know what the word in Shakespeare means because other people use them and we read them first. Basically.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. And while Arthur C. Clarke has a little bit about how these this tribe of Australopithecines will propagate and eventually take over the world near the end of the first section of the book. Basically, Kubrick does that in a jump cut.
Yeah. See, obviously this is possibly a design choice and possibly a result of the abilities they had available to them. But I'm half surprised that they didn't effectively have the bone morph into the ship.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if it were done, or like if someone were stupid enough to try and do a 2001 reboot, which I think they would probably get lynched for.
Probably.
I think that's probably something that they would try and do.
Yeah. I can't imagine that going over well if someone did try and do that, though.
Yeah, because the bone to the spaceship is somewhat of a damning state on the nature of humanity. Is we've gone from one weapon to another.
Yeah. Yeah, humans don't change. They simply get better at what they do.
Yeah. But, it's in this where, this point where we're, where we see, we're following a doctor who is taking a business trip to the moon because before we even landed on the moon, we thought, hey, we'll actually have like bases on the moon that we can just like fly to with the same kind of attitude as you would if you were taking a business trip across the world.
Yeah. Which, in fairness,
Yeah.
given it's going to take like 14 to 18 hours for me to get from here to Texas,
Yeah.
I can I can sort of see that like the trip length wouldn't be that impossible once we have the technology to do it reliably.
Yeah.
I think they were just a bit adventurous with 2001.
Yeah. Though, I mean, we do have something of a, somewhat accurate prediction, because after all the neat, camera rotating tricks to show you that they're in space, and orientation is subjective.
Yeah.
Or
not that they did this before Ender's Game or anything.
I mean, they did.
Precisely. That was more the comment.
Yeah. They're showing us that the enemy's gate is down. The doctor we're following, stops at what, essentially the ISS, but not the ISS. Like a what?
A 60s imagining of what the ISS actually really was.
Yeah, or a 60s. I think it's more of a 60s imagining of what the ISS could be.
Fair.
And leave it to, and I think part of this is Clark's influence on the screenplay, because you see how the gravity for this ISS is made by rotational energy. And Clark's writing, Clark was really into the nitty gritty mechanics of space travel.
This is true, yeah. Very much. From what I've seen of it, it's like, okay, so here is all this information about how either we theorize it works or how we know it works.
Yeah, and of course, all done with camera angle, all done with, camera angles set to Blue Danube. Because of course it is.
Valid. I think as well, Arthur C. Clarke is someone else who's also been very influential, so this film is made between two influential people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, two influential people of their chosen medium worked together and made a landmark film and novel that it is kind of hard to understand on the first viewing. It's a very important work, but it's one that you kind of need to ease into.
Valid.
But we do get a look on this ISS where it basically predicts Skype, because the doctor phones his, video calls his daughter from the ISS. Wishes her a happy birthday, asks to talk to her mom, but she's off.
It feels like while some of the tech was really ambitious, things like the call, but also like the voice for Hal and for like some of the interfaces.
Yeah.
It feels like some of the predictions for where tech would go were actually pretty on the nose.
Yeah, I mean, which makes sense because once again, Arthur C. Clarke was essentially a co-writer, and he would, in between writing some of the best science fiction works of the time, he was like, I think he was an orbital mechanic or something like that. Like, he was in the field.
I'm going to go to Google and find this out now, because that sounds correct, but I want to look at it.
Yeah, like he was some kind of he was some kind of engineer or orbital science, orbital mechanics scientist. Like,
yeah. I mean, just in his name, he was part of the Royal Astronomical Society and the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire.
Oh. And
yeah, he received the Kalinga Prize for popularizing science.
Yeah. Basically, he was the Neil deGrasse Tyson before Neil deGrasse Tyson, or rather, he was the Carl Sagan before Carl Sagan.
Yeah, pretty much. He was just space Carl Sagan.
Yeah. And we have a brief scene with the Doctor running into some Russian doctors and chatting about their work, and they're probing him about why he's going to the moon, and he's being evasive. So we see, even in this idealized 2001 where people are cooperating in the name of science and everyone is a doctor, or all the characters on screen are doctors, that there's still Cold War shenanigans going on. And honestly, that's like, even that touch of cynicism is still a bit optimistic, I feel.
Yeah, I feel like the fact that they didn't threaten to nuke each other is...
And then we get another cut to the the shuttle that goes from the ISS to the moon base. So, which is more gravitational camera trickery set to Strauss. Like a good fit, like 80 to 90% of the middle of this movie is just gravitational camera trickery set to Strauss.
That feels like a far better explanation than it deserves to be.
Yeah. And we essentially learn that the base, like, the Americans discovered a monolith that was intentionally buried in the Tycho crater 4 million years ago. And so the Doctor goes to, check out the monolith, and of course the Americans are keeping this hush, 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 and are actually set out a cover story that there's an epidemic going on in the base. Oh, and which reminds me of a fun fact that I came across while watching this, because I was watching it on Amazon, and they have little, like, trivia facts, like it, flashing on the screen.
That's fun.
But because of the way Kubrick chose to have the like he essentially had the camera working backwards, and the system he used, the system for that used like very fragile, very expensive glass, like to the point where the pressure and temperature difference from breathing on it could cause it to crack.
Ooh.
So like all the technicians on set had to wear face masks. Which is, I don't know, it felt topical. Okay, but anyway,
Apparently, my internet connection's made of the same sort of glass.
yeah. But it, in case you missed it, basically like everyone on the technical crew had to wear face masks.
Which later on in the film, they really should have done in the pod.
Yeah. And it actually caused a rumor to spread around that Kubrick was afraid of afraid of catching of getting infected with some kind of disease. But it felt topical for some reason.
Face masks? What are they? Not heard of them recently.
Yeah. But anyways, so the doctor and several other doctors, several of the base personnel go to check out the monolith. And as they're taking a picture, we're getting the same score cue, like the same score is playing as it did when the apes were touching the monolith in Africa. And there's an uncomfortably high-pitched noise coming through. And the camera pans up and we see the monolith, the earth, and the sun in alignment, which is, it's a fun, mirroring of the previous ape shot.
Yeah.
And
this is another one of them things that I feel like probably was a technique that Kubrick was like, fuck it, this would be fun. And then everyone else has gone, ooh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. And then we cut to 18 months later with a title card just saying 18 months later, and we see Discovery 1, which the ship, I think Lucas might have been a bit of a fan of 2001, or the models were really, really cheap.
Either way, maybe both.
Yeah. Because, the design of the Discovery 1 is very reminiscent of various ships in Star Wars. And, of course, we know Star Wars came later.
Do we? I thought Star Wars existed since 6,000 years ago.
Oh, yeah. See, the problem is, Eve ate from the tree of the prequels. and that's why humanity has fallen.
That tracks, because they heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Yeah. But so we have more gravitational camera tricks set to Strauss. And we meet, Dr. David Bowman and Dr. Frank Poole. as they watch a BBC interview of themselves to, get the audience caught up onto what's going on, because even though Kubrick's giving any request for hand-holding with a middle finger, the plot must move on.
Yeah, like, I will not hold your hand, but I will move the plot along, and if your hand happens to be there.
Yeah. And we're introduced to, Frank Poole, the David Bowman, the three other crew members who don't ever get any other speaking parts, who don't get any speaking parts whatsoever, because they're just in hibernation until they die. Spoiler alert for a 40-year-old movie. or a 40-plus-year-old movie. No, it's like 50-plus-year-old. Jesus Christ.
See, I'm now starting to try to work out how many years ago it was released, because now my brain is like, wait, how do numbers?
It was released in 1968.
But yeah, if it was released in 68, then that would make it... Oh. Fuck, why is my head doing this now?
Let's see.
That'd make it, 53-ish years.
Yeah.
52 something.
So yeah, spoilers for a 53-ish-year-old movie. And so, most of the crew is in hibernation, and they just die in the film. So we never see anything of them more than them just being in little pods of sleep in some of the camera shots. And we meet the quote unquote villain of the piece. HAL 9000, who is basically the progenitor of every evil computer in media, every subsequent evil computer in media.
Yes. The OG evil intelligence.
Yeah. Which is kind of an unfair characterization, in my opinion.
So?
Because it's not really Hal's fault that he flipped out.
Actually, this is fair. It was part of a thing.
Yeah, basically, being a computer, he was, like the 9000 series of computers were essentially made to be perfect and never distort information. However, spoiler alert for a 53-year-old movie, there's a secret addition to the mission that Hal had been tasked with hiding from Bowman and Poole. And the dissonance between I must give reliable information and I must keep this hidden from the crew at all costs caused him to go insane.
Yeah, it's like you've given me contradictory information, so now my internal computing does explosions.
Yeah. And like I said, it's, once again, with most things in regards to 2001, you get a lot more of that from the book. Kubrick gives you little like breadcrumbs, but mostly just the middle finger.
Yeah, I also think it's very fun how pervasive in the ship Hal is.
Oh yeah, Hal is the ship. You know, pretty like in fact it's said in the interview by either the interviewer or Poole or Bowman, where that Hal is essentially the brain and central nervous central nervous system of the ship.
I think that the premise of the journey is really interesting and something that, because obviously Clark did a lot of like sci-fi stuff.
Yeah.
I think this was one of the sci-fi things that wasn't accurate was our cryogenic abilities.
Yeah. But I mean that's something that just kind of needed to happen for plot.
Yeah, it was like we could excuse it.
Yeah. Like in regards to like the ooh. Now here's the question is it depends on whether or not the AI is kinky.
This is true.
And
I was also going to add, it also depends if they have like, the whole pressure padding so you can feel where everyone in the ship is.
Yeah.
Is that effectively the ship having a nervous system?
Yeah.
Can the ship literally feel you inside it?
Yeah. I'm now this was not explored in the book, but however, I am pretty sure that it's been explored in some kind of fan fiction somewhere.
Oh, almost certainly. I'm sure me and Noodle could probably give us half an hour of research, do a whole show on just 2001: A Space Odyssey fanfic.
Yeah. And now here's the other thing is like the question is Hal actually capable of consent? Because it's very blurry on the line. Hal 9000 is very blurry on the is Hal just a very advanced computer, or is he actually capable of sapience?
Yeah, like, can he have his own individual thoughts and shit? Which I feel like Hal is kind of the border where we have to say, okay, anything past this point is definitely something that we need to get consent from.
Yeah.
I feel like if you asked Hal for consent, Hal would probably just say yes because of programming, and so that very blurry line.
Yeah, though also the thing is, Hal is basically the line between a hyper advanced computer program and an actual sapient being.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I feel like bits of this film, and not like enough to call it a theme or anything, but bits of this film do touch on the line between humanity and other animals, robots, sapient life forms, take your pick.
Yeah. Well, and it like you could very much say it's it's definitely somewhat a theme of the novel as well, because the the monolith builders, essentially engineered humanity. And meanwhile, in 2001, humanity has engineered its own intelligence in HAL 9000.
Yeah.
So, like, there is an idea of the propagation of intelligence throughout the universe as a theme of both 2001, the book, and the movie. As for the sequel, I was a moron in high school and I accidentally spoiled the sequel for myself. or at least book wise. Because I read 2001 A Space Odyssey, and then while I was browsing through my high school library, I saw 3001 The Final Odyssey, and I'm like, oh, the sequel. No, this is like the last book in a 6-book series. And I haven't really gone back to try and read the whole series, and I'm not sure if I want to watch 2010 without reading the book first. Especially given how 2001 is.
Just like, this is fine.
Yeah. But, we do get some, we get a little bit of life on the ship with, the crew receiving personal, pre-recorded messages and playing chess with Hal. And then Hal announces that there's going to be a part failure. And when they go, they can't, they swap it out in an actually surprisingly tense scene, because instead of the gravitational camera trickery set to Strauss, it's gravitational camera trickery set to just breathing.
Yeah, the lack of music when music is so prevalent in the film does set its own tone.
Yeah. And so, but that goes out without a hitch. And they find nothing wrong with the part, so they go swap it out again. But Bowman and Poole have concerns, and they take some precautions to discuss their misgivings about the about Hal. Unfortunately, and it's not really a plot twist, because it's explicitly told to us via camera angles. But it is Hal does announce it later in the movie that, yeah, he could read their lips.
Yeah, hence my earlier comment. They should really have worn face masks.
Yeah. And so Poole is Poole goes out from his, to swap the part out, and is ejected from the ship, but he was not the imposter.
Oh, I saw that tweet this morning, and my head forgot for a second we were covering this, so it just clicked again.
Yeah, oh, yeah, that. No, seriously, there are shots of Poole floating out in space that look like that.
They're from an Among Us game.
Yeah, that look like they're from an Among Us game. And and especially given the fact that all the spacesuits are different primary colors. I think I might have broken Sam. But so and David goes out to try and rescue Frank and is unsuccessful. Well, he is successful in recovering the body, but Hal won't open the Oh, okay. We did lose a Sam. But, Hal won't open. Oh, and we have a Sam back. If I can click it right.
Oh, probably.
Yeah. But, yeah, I'm not sure if you caught that, but yeah, all of the spacesuits in 2001 are different primary colors.
Yeah, my reaction to that was, oh shit, yeah, they were.
And of course, here is where we get the famous open the pod bay door, pal. And I'm sorry, I can't do that, Dave.
Hello, Dave.
Yeah. And he has to leave, Frank's body floating out in space so he can use the manipulators on the pod to open the manual emergency airlock. And we get to the second the second bit of why I say Hal is basically the line between hyper advanced computer and actual sapient being. Because the first is obviously he takes the initiative to try and murder the entire crew so he can complete the mission himself.
Yeah, whoever programmed that instinct into the robot, you done goofed.
Yeah, well, and like I said, and I know when you're talking about a movie, in the book, it is kind of a forbidden phrase. But 2001 is a special case because the book and the screenplay were written in tandem with each other and are essentially two parts of the same, they're two sides of the same coin. And in the book, it's basically, just described as the result of the cognitive dissonance brought on by Hal having to hide the secret mission from Poole and Bowman. It's basically the cognitive dissonance drove Hal to homicidal psychosis. But we get to our second bit, or the second main piece of evidence that I used to say Hal is the line, because we get to Hal's monologue as he's begging Bowman not to disconnect him, which is actually I found it surprisingly moving for a monologue, delivered in a completely emotionless monotone.
Yeah. It felt sort of like there are a couple of shows that I shall not name in case of spoilers, where some sort of AI effectively has a built-in defense mechanism of like begging for their life if someone decides to try and turn them off.
Yeah.
And it feels almost like that. Like what we've seen of HAL, it feels like it's a defense mechanism.
Now, see, I like. Well, for me, it felt like essentially nearing the line of sapient being, as in it felt like a genuine, like something of a genuine emotional response.
Yeah.
And we do get like the hint that Hal might have emotions, because in the interview, the interviewer says it sounded like he spoke of his, achievements with something akin to pride.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a very fun look at HAL, though, and it does also raise the point that there could probably have been like a whole second film that was just HAL's perspective of the whole thing.
Yeah. But it's like it is pretty heart-wrenching to hear Hal essentially go through all the stages of grief as he's being functionally lobotomized.
Yeah.
And then finally just regressing to his first, quote unquote conscious memory of being demonstrated to the pub, to some conference by Singing Daisy. And that's when, an automatic message plays where we learn that, yes, it was the government's fault for hiding this secret mission to check out the monolith orbiting Jupiter. Now, I will say there is this is like one of the main, like, this is kind of where the book and movie kind of diverge. It's because in the book it was orbiting the moon Titan.
Yeah.
And I think I think if I remember right, like, Hal started going crazy when they were doing when just after the slingshot around Jupiter, because he had to actually divert the ship, but also keep it a secret from the crew.
Yeah.
But
just like, I never distort information. Equally, I must not give you this information.
Yeah. And so Bowman goes out in a pod, and we get the motif for the monolith, which was actually just lifted from some classical piece because the entire score is just classical music. And I am kind of disappointed that this line from Bowman isn't actually, or that this scene is silent, because we get in the book, we get a transmission from Bowman as he's approaching the monolith, and then his last words, broadcast to Earth, are, "My God, it's full of stars," and I just love that line.
I think that is a very impactful line, yeah.
But instead, we we go through, he goes into this monolith, because this monolith is basically a Stargate. And we probably get our first on-screen depiction of wormhole travel in media.
Oh, you froze up for a second there on my end.
I said, and we probably get our first on-screen depiction of wormhole travel in media, as Bowman enters into the monolith and things get all kaleidoscopy and laser.
Yeah, lots of fun lights and colors.
Yeah. Though I will say, after the crazy neon lines and all the screen distortion and shots of paint swirling around to look like galaxies, Bowman in the wormhole is something that, if you want to just pop a few magic mushrooms and just watch something trippy, just like that scene.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I'd be surprised if there isn't an edit of that scene set to Inagata Devita.
Oh, that's excellent.
But that being said, when it starts to get to landscapes of different planets with the colors all distorted via film trickery, I'm pretty sure it was done with by manipulating the actual film and doing different exposures of Earth landscapes to make the colors go all weird. Which further is a surprisingly simple yet effective way of demonstrating how alien an environment is. I do have to give Kubrick props for that.
This is valid. I think that as a technique is almost impressive in how simple it is for what it does.
Yeah. While Kubrick, while Kubrick is basically spending the entire movie giving you the middle finger for trying to figure things out, he's very effective at using the camera to communicate the mechanics of how things are going. Because, like I said, the majority of the second act is, gravitational camera trickery set to Strauss. And
yeah, the majority of the film is classical music, not talking.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we have, shots of pan-galactic madness. It gets very cosmic eldritch horror at the end, just because Bowman's seeing things he can't even comprehend. And it's literally just pretty colors on the screen with color distorted shots of Bowman's eye.
Yeah, it does feel very the nice side of eldritch horror.
Yeah. And Bowman finds himself in finds that the pod is in a room, like, you know, a seemingly like a scarily mundane like Earth room with like different art pieces hanging around, and it's got like a nice bed and stuff. And and one of the great things about how this is just shot is you get a clear look on the of like what the fuck on the actor's face, which once again I like. The biggest problem is, this film has is the fact that Kubrick's like, no, you figure this out yourself. But he also does a great job of using the camera and using like, film trickery and angle trickery to convey different emotions and mechanics of the plot without actually giving you the plot, which arguably getting the plot is probably more important, but uh, it's like, on one hand, I've got to give him props for communicating what he communicates so effectively. On the other hand, he could have also, given a few minutes of the, diverted a few minutes of the film to actually communicate the plot.
Yeah, doing the whole, like, you don't even need exposition, just like a scene where two people discuss the mission properly.
Yeah. And like, once again, like, we learn in the book, because if you want to know what's actually going on via the plot, you kind of have to read the book, that this room Bowman finds himself in is basically created from memory, like assembled from memories from his brain. And like, we see like clips of Bowman just like walking around this weird room, and there's two, and he sees himself like aging, and like, there are shots where he's looking at future versions of himself in this weird time room, and then we get a shot of him lying on the bed as an ancient decrepit old man, and he basically does the Adam pose, and the monolith is there, and then suddenly he's a space fetus.
Yeah, the ending feels slightly absurdist.
Yeah.
And very open to interpretation. And it's something I like about the film, in the same way I really like it about An Inspector Calls.
Yeah. And I will say once again, like in the book, you basically learn that what this monolith did is essentially it did what the African monolith did to the to the Australopithecines, is it edged David onto the next step of evolution essentially, and David goes back to Earth as essentially Space Jesus.
While that is an amusing description, honestly, that tracks.
Yeah. Like, in fact, like, while the last shot is, the space fetus orbiting Earth. I do kind of like the book ending better because it does say it does say that David is still David, but something else. And praise Space Jesus.
Praise Space Jesus.
But basically he shows up to Earth and like blinks all of the nuclear warheads out of existence.
I think that it's very fun. I feel like the setup for the film is very based in how reality's technology works.
Yeah.
And then the last end bit is just this.
Well, I mean, like the end is very Clark's Law.
True.
Which is fitting because it was, Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick collaborating. But, for those who don't know, Clark's third law, or Clark's Law, is any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Yep.
And yeah, and
it's actually specifically Clark's third law.
That's what I said. Clark's third law, or more commonly known as Clark's Law.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's a landmark film, especially considering its place in time. It was, in fact, the last movie set in space to be filmed before the moon landing, which kind of led to the Kubrick faked the moon landing conspiracy theory. Is like supposedly one of the earlier versions of the theory is they used scrapped supposed scrapped footage from 2001 to fake the moon landing.
Yes, that's how that works.
Yeah. And so yes, it is, it's a very important piece of film history. It's a very important piece in the history of sci-fi. However, and what the movie communicates, it does so effectively. But given how Kubrick is basically, giving the middle finger to anyone who wants to know what's going on with the plot, I highly suggest reading the book instead.
Honestly, that tracks. I feel like it would be an experience to sit someone who's never seen it down while they were not sober and have them watch it.
Yeah. And I mean, I can definitely see like 2001 being a movie that you just kind of like sit back with a bong and just kind of vibe to.
Honestly, yeah, that tracks.
Like, because like I said, it like a large part of the movie is just gravitational camera trickery set to Strauss. Like a lot of my jokes about Kubrick in 2001 are very, very reductive. However, they are apt descriptions of what you are going to get when when you watch this movie.
Yeah, I'll be honest, having just seen scenes from it, sometimes it took me a while to realize they were the same film, and it was like,
Yeah.
oh, so this is just a collection of like scenic shots with music. Okay.
Yeah. Basically, there are only there are only really two ways you can like engage with 2001 and like actually get something out of it. One is to devote your entire attention to watching what's going on the screen and trying to pick out what the plot is, preferably having read the book first. The second is just getting high and vibing off it.
Alternatively, doing the first and then the second.
Yeah. Yeah. I tried that, didn't work for me. Then again, I had meth in my bong.
Valid.
Yeah. So, Sam, any final thoughts?
At some point in an evening, I should like actually get round to watching all of this, because while I know the plot and I've seen enough of it to get it, it does feel like one of those things that the proper way to experiencing it is focusing on it.
Yeah. I will warn you, the first like 2 minutes, but like 2 minutes of the film, like before even the like studio logo, it is just the screen blank with with like classic, like with the like distorted string effects for the monolith.
Okay.
and because it was released in the times where movies had an intermission, there is an intermission in the middle, and it's like a good like 5 minutes or so of just it's like intermission, and then it's just the screen black with like the same noise. Honestly, I fast forwarded through the intermission.
Some bits of it just be like, yeah, no, we can afford to miss that bit.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I think in our modern age of like of streaming and having access to screens everywhere, unless you're doing a theatrical release, a theatrical re-release, you should probably have an option to just skip the intermission in most movie for most movies in most formats.
Yeah.
Like the one exception to that rule I can think of would be Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but that's because it's full of jokes poking fun at the notion of having intermissions. So, it's worth actually watching the intermission in that case.
That, and then there's actually a couple of YouTube channels that I watch where they have like integrated ads that are related to the video.
Yeah.
And it's like, those are fun to watch, especially if they get creative with it. But by and large, there's no point to them now.
Oh yeah, no, I'm talking about like for modern formats of old movies, from the era when movies had intermissions like plays did.
Yeah.
So if you're like watching Ben-Hur in the modern era, or 2001 in the modern era, you should have the option to just like put, like a little notification will like pop up, like the Netflix skip intro, button.
Yeah, that'd be handy.
It's like, do you want to skip the intermission? Because the purpose that the intermission served back then was give people a chance to get up and stretch their legs, use the restroom, maybe catch a quick smoke break, top up on snacks, etc.
Yeah, whereas now, if you like need the loo or want to nip outside for a fag, you can just do that.
Yeah, you can just either pause it or take it with you.
Yeah.
Like the intermission is is only useful if you're re-release, if you're doing a theatrical re-release.
Yeah.
But that's a bit of a tangent. So I think we'll move on to shilling. You got anything coming up?
So I should have another thing of pub religion coming out, but I've again been awful with it because, like, I acknowledge I had a period of time where the reason that a pub religion wasn't being put out was simply because I had shit going on.
Yeah.
Now I just have executive dysfunction.
Yeah. The I can't do it because I have stuff going on, and then just just Newton's law.
Yeah. Newton's law of neurotypes.
Yeah.
Just says no.
Yeah. Basically, now you've got now you're just kind of stuck in the inertia.
Pretty much, yeah. I will be trying to preset releases for this week and then when I'm in the US, because I'm going to Texas for Faithless Forum, but I'm going for like a week so I can see my boyfriend. But when I get back from that, I will almost certainly be making some content in relation to the Faithless Forum, because fuck it, might as well.
I'd be tempted to go, but this time of year is the thou shalt not take time off time of year for my job.
Valid. The only reason I'm able to go is that I'm still looking for a job.
Yeah. And I like, while we did do a stream on Monty Python, I do feel like we could very much do an entire month just going more into detail of various bits of Monty Python.
Oh hell yeah! Honestly, we could probably do like episodes on like pairs of sketches.
Oh yeah, well, and I mean, like there's Life of Brian, which is, objectively their best movie. I will fight you on that.
I have not seen that, but I do very much like the Holy Grail.
Yeah, and there is and there's the Holy Grail, which is still based. Which, if Atheist Pastor is watching this, is still more based off Don Quixote than actual Arthurian myth, and I will still fight you on that.
I mean, honestly, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah, fun fact, the only stream debate I've ever been in was me versus Atheist Pastor on Nevermore Tavern, debating Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
That's fun.
Yeah. But as for the rest of this month is Kubrick month, as stated before. Next week will be Full Metal Jacket in honor of in honor of Veterans Day, and I think we'll follow that up with Doctor Strangelove, and then in the month with Spartacus, because I think everyone would like to watch Noodle have a hissy fit over Spartacus right before we go into animation month. And of course, as always, secular D&D on Saturday, though I will say, because I am
We have been hissed at.
Yeah, we have been hissed at. But keep an eye on my Twitter, because there is a good chance that stream times will be adjusted, because we're entering the busy time of year, and 6-day weeks are mandatory. And it's looking like my 6th day will probably be a Sunday, which means both secular D&D will have to be earlier, and Media Musings will have to be later.
Gotta love it when work forces your schedule.
Yeah. Honestly, though, it's better. It'll be better for my body than picking up Monday.
Valid.
Yeah. And with that, I think we can move on to taglines. Sam?
Have a day, and remember, communication is key.
And remember, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think on. Too often, we forget that.